Not live the American dream, but they're in debt clear up to their eyeballs. What would you do to fix that?
That's a great question. The question was about debt and about our grandchildren. Well, I think, first of all, that's a very honest way of phrasing the question. You know, we can talk about $18 trillion of debt, tens of trillions of dollars of unfunded accrued liabilities, but let's make it really simple. That debt is the equivalent of us going into our children's bedrooms, breaking open their piggy banks, and stealing their money. And that's what we're doing. We can pretend like we're printing money and borrowing it from China, but we're basically taking this from our children. I think we got to do three things. One, we got to change the rules. What do I mean by that? Look, I was in Congress. They're not going to balance the budget. We keep thinking, oh, we'll just send a few more Republicans, things will get better. They spend more money than they have when Republicans are in the majority or when Democrats are in the majority. They spend more when Democrats are in the majority, but neither actually balances the budget. So first, you got to change the rules. What do I mean by that? A balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. A line item veto to get rid of some of this pork in these budget bills. Supermajority vote before they can raise our taxes. Supermajority vote before they can grow government faster than the private sector economy. Now, people will tell you can't do those things. All of those things are in our state constitution. I'd go further. I'd say you also have to have term limits and a part-time Congress, so you have to get rid of this permanent political class. So they live under the same rules they apply to the rest of us. The Founding Fathers never intended for these folks to go to Congress, earn six-figure salaries, and then stay and become lobbyists. They intended these folks to be making a sacrifice. Leave your farms, leave your businesses, go work there temporarily, and then come back into the country you wanted to serve. And as long as we got a permanent governing class, they'll never, they all thought Obamacare was great until somebody said, why don't we take away your exemptions? Then all of a sudden they didn't like it so much. And so I think we need a part-time Congress as well that lives under the same rules. Now, I joke, I'd like to pay them a per diem instead of a six-figure salary. We'd pay them a per diem for every day they stay outside of D.C. instead of every day they go to D.C. The second thing we've got to do is the federal government's doing so many things it shouldn't be doing. The Constitution says to the federal government, you're supposed to defend us. And yet instead, we've got the federal government doing things like micromanaging school lunches, forcing Common Core into our classrooms. We need to shrink some of these things. And so, for example, the federal Department of Education spends billions of dollars on teacher quality programs that don't improve teacher quality. Either get rid of the programs or block grant the dollars to the states. Block grant the Title I dollars to the states or let it follow the child, divisible and portable, so the federal Department of Education can't blackmail local states, threatening their own tax dollars or No Child Left Behind waivers unless they do Common Core. That was never supposed to be a federal-driven policy. K-12 education has always been done primarily at the state and local levels. And so shrink the federal Department of Education, shrink the EPA so they're not micromanaging the water in your backyards. We're suing them on the water rule as well as the Clean Power Rule. We also need to, the Department of Justice had these fast and furious scandals, and they're suing us for state school choice. We won that lawsuit. But you've got a lot of agencies that have gotten beyond their original. We need a smaller IRS, a lower, flatter tax code, so they don't have the discretion to go after conservative groups or others for their beliefs. And so we need to shrink the size of these agencies. And by the way, I also think after some of these scandals, wouldn't it be nice if some of these bureaucrats actually lost their jobs and benefits and actually went to jail? If that happened, maybe we wouldn't have all these scandals. But we also have a bunch of math deniers in D.C. They pretend like everything's fine. They know Social Security and Medicare will run out of money by 2030. We're going to have to improve our entitlement programs. The earlier we do it, the better it'll be. We worked on the commission that came up with the idea of premium support for Medicare that would save taxpayers and beneficiaries money. And the reality is the sooner we do this, the longer you have, the easier you can phase in changes, you can grandfather people in. The longer we wait, the harder it's going to be. The third thing we have to do. So we have to change the rules. We have to shrink the size of the government. I don't mean slow the growth rate. I mean shrink it. And again, I'm the only candidate that's actually done that. Everybody talks about it. I'm the only one that's actually reduced the size of government. The third thing we've got to do is we've got to grow the private sector economy. This 2% growth cannot be the new norm. The stagnant middle-class incomes cannot be the new norm. We need a lower, flatter tax code. We need energy independence so we can bring good-paying manufacturing jobs here. We need all of the above so we have the steel, the fertilizer, the petrochemical industries come back. In Louisiana, we've got $60 billion of private capital investment. We've got 90,000 jobs coming into the state. We can't have the highest tax rates in the developed world. We need to roll back these regulations. There should be an independent cost-benefit analysis, and any regulation that hurts the economy, Congress should have to vote on it, up or down, so these bureaucrats, these unelected bureaucrats, can't continue to interfere with the economy. You repeal Obamacare, so the uncertainty, the regulations, the taxes are removed. Yesterday, I talked to a small business owner, and he told me his business is doing so well he could be adding several additional people, but he's not. He said because that would put him over the threshold, subject to all those new regulations and costs, so he's holding still, he's waiting. Think about that. That's 6 other families that could be right now earning a good paycheck that aren't because of the uncertainty of Obamacare. But the only way we're going to balance our budget, we have to do all 3 of those things. Otherwise, Congress will never take on the hard choices till we make them. We've got to shrink the size of our government. There are things that it shouldn't be doing that it's doing today, and we've got to grow the private sector economy. You do all 3 of those things, then we can stop borrowing. And by the way, did you hear the president? He was trying to sell a very bad deal to Iran, and this was his rationale. Now, this isn't me, this is the President of the United States. Say, well, look, America alone can't put effective sanctions on Iran. And we can't convince the Chinese, for example, to go along with us because we need them to buy our debt. The President of the United States saying that his inability to control government spending has weakened our standing on the world stage. And means now we've got to accept a bad deal with Iran. This is him trying. This was one of his best excuses and defenses and rationales for taking the Iran deal. This is not my criticism. This is him saying, here's a good reason for you to give them over $100 billion to fund terrorism. So this borrowing from China, this overspending hurts us economically, but it hurts us in other ways as well. In terms of being able to stand up to China and others, and Iran and others. We got to do all 3 of those things. But you're exactly right. I think the way you phrased it was exactly right. We are stealing from our children. I see you standing up. Is that all right? I think we've gotten to the hour. I know not everybody got to ask their question. I'm going to stick around afterwards. Anybody that wants to come to me and ask me your question or get a picture or whatever, just visit.